The discovery of the lost race. The crystal spires of Nexus Prime stretched toward the infinite stars, their surfaces reflecting the soft glow of 14 different suns. This magnificent space station served as the heart of the Galactic Harmony Alliance, a coalition of 47 peaceful species that had maintained perfect unity for over 800 years. Wars were ancient history here, violence was a forgotten concept, and every dispute was settled through calm negotiation and mutual understanding. Commander Zaris Valden stood before the great viewing portal in his crystalline form, watching cargo ships drift peacefully between the station's docking arms. His translucent blue body sparkled with contentment as he reviewed the day's reports. Trade was flourishing, cultural exchanges were expanding, and not a single conflict had been reported anywhere in Alliance territory for the past 3 years. As the Alliance's chief archaeological investigator, Zaris had spent centuries studying the remnants of ancient civilizations, but all the violent species had destroyed themselves long before achieving space travel. It was, as everyone knew, the natural order of evolution. His peaceful reflection was interrupted by an urgent chime from his communication device. Dr. Kalina Vash, his lead field archaeologist, appeared as a shimmering hologram. Her 6-armed insectoid form was vibrating with excitement, a sure sign she had discovered something extraordinary. "Commander Valden," she chirped in the melodic language of her species, "you need to see what we've found in the outer spiral ruins. This discovery challenges everything we know about galactic history." Zaris turned from the window, his crystalline features shifting to show curiosity. "What have you discovered, Dr. Vash?" "We found evidence of a spacefaring species that maintained violent capabilities well into their stellar age. They called themselves humans, and according to our dating methods, they vanished only 5,000 years ago. That's practically yesterday in galactic terms." The revelation struck Zaris like a plasma bolt. Every species in the Alliance had evolved beyond violence millions of years before developing faster than light travel. It was a fundamental law of nature. Aggressive species destroyed themselves long before reaching the stars. Yet here was evidence suggesting otherwise. "Impossible," Zaris replied, his form flickering with disbelief. "Send me all the data immediately. I'm calling an emergency session with the Archaeological Council." 3 hours later, Zaris stood in the grand chamber of the Archaeological Council, surrounded by the galaxy's greatest minds. The massive circular room accommodated representatives from dozens of species, each one peaceful, each one evolved beyond the primitive need for conflict. Holographic displays showed images from Dr. Vash's expedition to the outer spiral territories. Chancellor Vortex, the ancient leader whose slug-like species had lived for millions of years, examined the evidence with his numerous eye stalks. His voice rumbled like distant thunder as he spoke. "These artifacts are fascinating, Commander Valden, but surely you don't believe this species actually achieved interstellar travel while maintaining aggressive tendencies." Zaris activated the main display, showing images of massive metal structures found buried on 17 different worlds. "The evidence suggests exactly that, Chancellor. These humans built vessels designed specifically for warfare. Look at these weapon systems, these armor configurations. Every design principle violates our understanding of how intelligent life develops." Dr. Morpheus of the Pacifica Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with skepticism. Perhaps these humans were simply primitive beings who destroyed themselves before truly reaching the stars. The artifacts could be from attempted space programs that failed. "That's what I thought initially," Zaris replied, manipulating the display to show stellar maps. "But we found evidence of their presence on worlds separated by hundreds of light years. They didn't just reach space. They built an interstellar civilization that spanned multiple star systems." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 800 years, the Alliance had been built on the principle that peace was the only path to the stars. Violence and intelligence were mutually exclusive at advanced levels, yet here was evidence of a species that had somehow broken this fundamental law. Elder Simeon of the Harmony Keepers raised one of her many tentacles. "Where are these humans now? If they were so advanced, what happened to them?" Before Zaris could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as the voice of the station's AI echoed through the halls. Alert! Unknown vessel approaching Nexus Prime. Vessel does not match any known Alliance design. Estimated arrival in 6 minutes. Chancellor Vortex immediately activated the emergency protocols. All representatives to the observation deck. If this is first contact with an unknown species, we must greet them according to Alliance diplomatic standards. The group hurried to the main observation deck, where massive viewing screens showed the approaching vessel. What they saw defied all expectations. The ship was unlike anything in their databases, angular, dark, and covered with what appeared to be weapons systems. It moved with predatory grace, its hull reflecting no light as it glided silently through space. "By the eternal stars," whispered Dr. Morpheus, his energy form flickering with amazement. "It matches the design principles in the human artifacts." The unknown vessel came to a stop just outside Nexus Prime's defensive grid, which was little more than a sophisticated scanning system, since the Alliance had no enemies. A communication request came through, and after a moment of hesitation, Chancellor Vortex authorized the connection. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a face that sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives. The being on the screen looked remarkably similar to several Alliance species, but possessed an intensity in her eyes that spoke of experiences no Alliance member had ever known. Her skin was pale, her hair was dark, and she wore what appeared to be a military uniform covered in strange insignia. "This is Dr. Maya Thornfield of the Earth Archaeological Survey," the figure said in perfect galactic standard, though with an accent none of them recognized. "I represent the Terran Federation. We've been monitoring your Alliance for several decades, and we need to talk." The chamber erupted in excited whispers. Earth, Terran Federation. These were names from the ancient human artifacts. Chancellor Vortex composed himself and responded with traditional diplomatic courtesy. "Welcome, Dr. Thornfield. I am Chancellor Vortex of the Galactic Harmony Alliance. We are honored by this first contact. We recently discovered archaeological evidence of your people and believed your species had become extinct." Dr. Thornfield's expression grew grim. "Extinct? No, Chancellor. We've been hiding in the dark spaces between stars, protecting ourselves from threats that the peaceful species of this galaxy don't even know exist. But something has changed. The ancient enemy is stirring again, and your Alliance is directly in their path." "Ancient enemy?" Elder Simeon asked, her tentacles curling with confusion. "There have been no wars in this galaxy for over 800 years. What enemy could you possibly mean?" "The Mechanical Collective," Dr. Thornfield replied, her voice carrying a weight of terrible knowledge. "Your species call them legends now, but we've been fighting them in the void between galaxies for 5,000 years. They're machines that consume organic life to fuel their expansion. They're coming, and they'll be here within 3 months." The Alliance representatives exchanged glances of disbelief. Mechanical enemies, ancient wars, threats from beyond their galaxy. It sounded like the primitive fiction of prehistoric civilizations. Commander Zaris stepped forward. "Dr. Thornfield, with respect, we've achieved perfect peace through diplomatic evolution. Perhaps your people could benefit from our methods of conflict resolution. Violence is never the answer to any problem." For a moment, something flickered across Dr. Thornfield's face. Sadness, perhaps, or pity. "Commander, I appreciate your perspective, but some problems can only be solved through strength. The Mechanical Collective doesn't negotiate. They don't want territory or resources. They want to harvest every organic being in the galaxy and convert their biological energy into fuel for their expansion." Chancellor Vortex extended his diplomatic training. "Surely any intelligent species can be reasoned with. Perhaps these machines simply need to understand that we pose no threat to them." "Chancellor," Dr. Thornfield said quietly, "my ancestors tried reasoning with them 5,000 years ago. The result was the near extinction of humanity. We survived only by becoming something we never wanted to be. Warriors. We've spent 50 centuries preparing for their return, and that time has come." "What exactly are you proposing?" Elder Simeon asked. "Alliance. Dr. Thornfield replied simply. Your species have knowledge and resources that could be vital in the coming war. Our people have the military capabilities necessary to fight the collective. Together, we might survive what's coming. The chamber fell silent as the representatives processed this unprecedented situation. An unknown species was asking them to prepare for war against an enemy they didn't believe existed. Dr. Morpheus finally spoke. Dr. Thornfield, the Alliance has maintained peace for 8 centuries through diplomatic solutions. We don't possess weapons or military capabilities. Violence contradicts our fundamental evolutionary principles. Then you'll die, Dr. Thornfield said bluntly. The collective has converted 17 galaxies into lifeless mechanical wastes. Your peaceful evolution won't protect you from their harvesting machines. Chancellor Vortex drew himself up to his full impressive height. Dr. Thornfield, while we appreciate your concerns, the Alliance cannot base policy on unsubstantiated threats. We would be happy to provide your people with humanitarian aid and help you integrate into our peaceful society. Dr. Thornfield stared at the Chancellor for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of centuries of hard-won wisdom. Chancellor, in 3 months you'll understand why humanity chose to become warriors. By then, I pray it won't be too late. The communication ended, leaving the Alliance representatives in stunned silence. The human ship remained motionless outside their station for another hour, as if Dr. Thornfield was waiting for them to reconsider. Then, without another word, it vanished into the darkness between stars. In the days that followed, the Alliance Council debated the encounter extensively. Some representatives were intrigued by the possibility of learning about this hidden human civilization. Others worried that contact with such a violent species might corrupt their peaceful society. Most, however, dismissed Dr. Thornfield's warnings as the primitive fears of a species that had never evolved beyond warfare. Commander Xeris found himself uniquely positioned in the debate. His archaeological training told him the humans were telling the truth about their history, but his evolutionary instincts rejected the possibility that violence could be an effective solution to any problem. 3 weeks after the encounter, he received another urgent message from Dr. Vash. Her expedition had found new human ruins on the galaxy's edge, but these weren't ancient archaeological sites. These were recent military installations, still powered and operational. Commander, she reported through the holographic link, we found evidence of massive human military preparations, shipyards, weapon factories, training facilities, all hidden in star systems we thought were empty. The scale of their operation is staggering. Xeris studied the images she transmitted. Massive orbital shipyards produced warships by the hundreds. Planets had been converted into fortress worlds, their surfaces covered with defensive installations. Most shocking of all, the humans appeared to have a population in the billions, far more than anyone had imagined. How long have they been building this military infrastructure? Xeris asked. Based on the construction dates we can determine, at least 2,000 years, Dr. Vash replied. They've been preparing for this war for millennia. That night, Xeris stood again at his viewing portal, watching the peaceful traffic around Nexus Prime. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the station's lights, humanity was preparing for a war the Alliance refused to believe was coming. For the first time in his long life, Commander Xeris Valden began to question whether peace was always the answer. Part 2. When Legends Become Reality. 3 months passed in peaceful routine throughout Alliance space. Trade flourished, diplomatic missions continued their work, and the encounter with humanity faded into bureaucratic footnotes. Most representatives had concluded that Dr. Maya Thornfield represented a primitive offshoot of human civilization, probably suffering from collective paranoia developed during centuries of isolation. Commander Xeris, however, couldn't shake his growing unease. His archaeological teams had discovered more evidence of massive human military preparations throughout the outer territories. Hidden shipyards, weapon caches, and training facilities suggested a species that had spent millennia preparing for war. Yet the Alliance Council remained convinced that diplomacy could solve any problem. The illusion of eternal peace shattered on a Tuesday morning when the emergency klaxons screamed across every Alliance world simultaneously. Chancellor Vortex rushed to the command center of Nexus Prime, his massive form moving with surprising speed. The main tactical display showed something that defied belief. Massive signatures were appearing at the galaxy's edge, emerging from the dark spaces between star systems. The objects were enormous, each one larger than the Alliance's biggest space stations. "What am I looking at?" the Chancellor demanded. Chief Tactical Officer Rennis, a bird-like creature whose species had evolved from predators but retained only intellectual instincts, studied the readings with growing alarm. "Unknown mechanical constructs, Chancellor. They're emerging from hyperspace at 17 different coordinates along our border, EX. Each construct appears to be approximately 50 kilometers in length." The main screen flickered and resolved into a clear image that sent terror through every being in the command center. The objects weren't ships in any recognizable sense. They were mechanical monstrosities that looked like enormous metallic insects, their surfaces crawling with smaller mechanical units. As they watched, the massive constructs began moving inward toward Alliance space with deliberate predatory intent. "Are they attempting communication?" Chancellor Vortex asked, clinging to diplomatic hope. "No response to any of our standard greeting protocols," Officer Rennis replied. "But we're detecting massive energy signatures from their weapon systems. Chancellor, those things are armed with firepower levels that exceed our entire defensive grid by orders of magnitude." Before the Chancellor could respond, the mechanical collective announced their intentions in the most direct way possible. The lead construct fired a beam of coherent energy that struck the mining colony on Perseus 7. The planet's surface turned to molten glass in seconds, and 6 million Alliance citizens simply ceased to exist. The command center fell into horrified silence as they watched more beams lance out from the mechanical fleet. World after world died in brilliant flashes of destructive light. The collective wasn't interested in conquest or resources. They were systematically sterilizing every planet that showed signs of organic life. "Emergency session," Chancellor Vortex commanded. "All representatives to report immediately." Within an hour, the Alliance's leadership gathered via holographic link from across the galaxy. The peaceful beings who had governed through consensus and diplomatic negotiation for 8 centuries now faced the unthinkable reality of total war. Elder Simeon's tentacles trembled as she spoke from her home world. "The collective has already destroyed 14% Muslim colonies. Our estimates suggest they'll reach the core worlds within 6 days. Dr. Morpheus flickered with panic. "We must attempt communication. There has to be some way to negotiate with them." "We've tried every diplomatic protocol in our databases," Officer Rennis reported grimly. "They don't respond to offers of cooperation, resource sharing, or peaceful coexistence. They simply destroy everything organic they encounter." Commander Zaris realized with terrible clarity that Dr. Thornfield had been absolutely right. The Alliance faced an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or convinced to coexist. The mechanical collective had one goal: the complete extinction of organic life. "What about our defensive capabilities?" Chancellor Vortex asked desperately. Officer Rennis displayed a tactical analysis that painted a hopeless picture. "Our defensive grid was designed to scan for hazards and guide traffic, not repel military attacks. Our civilian vessels have no weapons beyond basic mining tools. We estimate that our entire fleet could delay the collective advance by perhaps 6 hours." The truth struck every representative simultaneously. The Alliance was defenseless. 800 years of perfect peace had left them completely unprepared for war. They had no weapons, no military tactics, and no warrior instincts. They were sheep facing mechanical wolves. "There must be something we can do," Dr. Morpheus pleaded. "Some species that can help us." Commander Zaris felt a spark of desperate hope. "The humans. Dr. Thornfield warned us this was coming. Maybe they know how to fight these things." "Those primitive warmongers?" scoffed Representative Callis from the Serenity Worlds. "What could they possibly do against this threat?" Before anyone could answer, Officer Rennis looked up from his console with amazement. "Chancellor, we're detecting massive hyperspace signatures throughout Alliance space. Something big is coming through." The tactical display exploded with new contacts as ship after ship materialized from hyperspace. But these weren't the elegant, peaceful vessels of Alliance design. These were brutal angular warships that looked like they had been forged for only one purpose: war. The lead ship was massive, its hull scarred and battle-tested, bristling with weapon systems that radiated lethal intent. As the Alliance representatives watched in stunned silence, hundreds more ships joined the formation. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, and classes of military vessel they had no names for. A communication request came through, and Chancellor Vortex accepted it with trembling appendages. Dr. Maya Thornfield appeared on screen, but now she wore full military dress uniform. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed organized chaos as human officers coordinated what was clearly a major military operation. "Chancellor Vortex," she said without preamble, "this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Defense Fleet. We've been monitoring the collective's advance. If you're ready to accept our help, we can begin defensive operations immediately." "Admiral," Chancellor Vortex replied, his voice heavy with the weight of 800 years of pacifist tradition, "the Alliance formally requests assistance from the Terran Federation." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "Understood. All Alliance vessels are to withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. We're engaging the collective now." What followed challenged everything the Alliance representatives thought they knew about space combat. The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of centuries of tactical experience. Their warships didn't simply fly toward the enemy. They flowed like predators, using gravitational fields and asteroid covers to mask their approach. The first engagement occurred at the edge of Alliance space, where 3 collective constructs were systematically destroying agricultural worlds. The Alliance observers watched through long-range sensors as 12 human destroyers approached the mechanical monsters. The constructs fired their planet-killing beams, but the human ships weren't where the beams struck. They had predicted the attack patterns and positioned themselves accordingly. In response, the destroyers unleashed weapons that the Alliance didn't even have theoretical frameworks for. Antimatter torpedoes struck the constructs' hulls, creating explosions that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Particle beams sliced through the mechanical armor like plasma cutters through paper. Most remarkably, the human weapons seemed designed specifically to counter the collective's technology. "How is this possible?" Dr. Morpheus whispered, as they watched one of the massive constructs break apart under the human assault. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication link. "We've been fighting the collective for 5,000 years. Every weapon, every tactic, every ship design has been developed specifically to counter their capabilities. They're dangerous, but they're not invincible." The battle raged for 6 hours across multiple star systems. The Alliance representatives watched in awe as human tactical brilliance repeatedly outmaneuvered the collective's brute force approach. The machines relied on overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, but the humans fought with cunning, adaptability, and an understanding of warfare that came from millennia of experience. When the last collective construct exploded in a brilliant nova of antimatter annihilation, the Alliance's pace fell silent except for the hum of human warships maintaining protective formations around every populated world. Admiral Chen reappeared on the communication screen, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. However, this was just a scouting force. The main collective fleet will arrive within the year." Chancellor Vortex found his voice after long moments of stunned silence. "Admiral, on behalf of the entire Alliance, I formally apologize for our previous dismissal of your warnings. We were wrong." "Chancellor, your species evolved beyond the need for violence. That's not something to apologize for," Admiral Chen replied. "But survival sometimes requires capabilities that peaceful evolution doesn't provide. We've maintained those capabilities so that others wouldn't have to." Elder Simeon extended a formal tentacle gesture of respect. "What you're saying is that humanity has been our protector all along, fighting threats we didn't even know existed." "Among other things," Admiral Chen confirmed, "the galaxy is a dangerous place beyond your borders. The collective is just one of several threats that emerge from the dark spaces between galaxies. We've been holding the line for 50 centuries. Over the following weeks, the Alliance learned the full scope of humanity's hidden civilization. The Terran Federation encompassed thousands of worlds, protected by a military that had been honed through constant warfare against threats from beyond the galaxy. They had sacrificed the peace that other species enjoyed to serve as guardians against the darkness. Commander Zaris found himself working closely with human military archaeologists, mapping the galaxy's defensive needs. He discovered that many empty star systems actually contained human military installations, and that the Federation had been quietly protecting Alliance space for generations. The final revelation came when Admiral Chen invited Alliance representatives to visit Earth itself. What they found challenged their assumptions about warrior societies. Earth was not the brutal, war-torn world they had expected. It was a planet of stunning beauty, where art, science, and philosophy flourished alongside military preparedness. "We fight so that others don't have to," explained Dr. Thornfield as she gave Commander Zaris a tour of the Global Defense Academy. "Every human understands that our military exists to protect life, not destroy it. We've never forgotten that peace is the goal. We've simply accepted that sometimes it must be defended." The Galactic Harmony Alliance underwent fundamental changes in the months that followed. The Treaty of Mutual Defense established the Terran Federation as the Alliance's military protector, while Alliance resources and scientific capabilities supported humanity's ongoing defense efforts. Most remarkably, the discovery of humanity's true nature actually strengthened the Alliance's commitment to peace. Knowing that dedicated protectors stood ready to face the galaxy's dangers allowed the peaceful species to continue their evolution toward even greater harmony. Commander Zaris often stood at his viewing portal now, watching human warships patrol the space around Nexus Prime. The sleek, dangerous vessels were a reminder that peace was not a natural state. It was a precious achievement that required constant vigilance to maintain. The galaxy had learned that legends sometimes held more truth than anyone wanted to believe. Humanity had never been the primitive warriors the Alliance thought them to be. They were something far more remarkable, a species that had chosen to carry the burden of war so that others could live in peace. As Admiral Chen had said in her final address to the Alliance Council, "Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice, defended by those with the courage to fight for it." The Alliance had found their protectors, and the galaxy was safer for it.